Traditional games media and YouTubers are pretty consistently at each other's necks when it comes to who does what right or wrong, or who knows best what their respective prospective audiences are looking for. It's been going on pretty much since the decline of games media as we knew it and the rise of YouTube. But more than ever, that's been thoroughly exemplified by this whole Dunkey versus traditional games media thing that's been going on. And for those of you that might not know because the internet is giant, Dunkey is a pretty big YouTuber that recently made a video criticizing games media. Well, I'm also a YouTuber. I consume traditional games media pretty regularly, and I think everyone involved is being big, dumb, stupid idiots and should kiss and make up. And also babies. To clear the air, I like Dunkey. I think his videos are hilarious and pretty well thought out. This isn't about hating on him or aiming up at the big guy to get some clicks or whatever. And on the other hand, I like personalities from sites like IGN, Kotaku, Polygon, etc. This, however, doesn't prevent me from seeing that everyone involved has some pretty big holes in their arguments. Each side thinks that neither side knows how to cover games correctly, and that they personally handle games completely different and way better. But, spoilers, they ain't all that different. The catalyst for this whole thing was the positive reception for the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. And to be honest, on this end, I gotta agree with Dunkey. At least in regards to it being sold to an audience of modern games in 2017. Let me explain something to you. Difficulty in games is valid when it comes to games like Super Meat Boy or Dark Souls. Those games challenge or test, that thing we do to establish skill, the player in a way that teaches them to better themselves not only in the specific portion of the game that they struggled through, but also it arms them with the knowledge necessary to play through the rest of the game with skill. These games are designed to be learned and again tested in difficult scenarios for that difficulty to make you better by getting through it. Crash can't teach the player to effectively gauge jumps. Only a better perspective could have done that. Crash can't teach the player to control Crash better. Only better controls could have done that. Crash Bandicoot was not designed to be difficult. It was just designed poorly for the medium and allowed to exist that way, which for a lot of people was acceptable back then. After all, it was a new frontier. 3D mascot platformers hadn't been done before, so everybody was learning. And that's fine, but it doesn't mean they're good. Your first drawing most likely sucked. The first meal you cooked likely sucked, and for most, their first 3D game sucked. Sometimes you get lucky and end up with something that isn't great, but it's workable. This is fine. I can work with this. I'm gonna save this, show it to my mom. Maybe we can hang it up on the fridge. Crash did a lot that was fine. Those things were also done just as well, if not better, in Donkey Kong Country games. You don't learn actionable skills in Crash because the game isn't designed in a way that would facilitate that. This level in Crash Bandicoot isn't hard because you need to be better at platforming. It's hard because designers didn't understand that square pegs don't go in round holes, no matter how big you make the hole. What I mean by that is it possible to beat these levels? Sure. Is it possible to eat steak with a spoon? Absolutely. Does that mean it's an effective approach? Hell no. But don't get me wrong, it did some new things, just not any good new things. Except for boxes, we can save those. But for the most part, nothing worth other devs taking notes on, unless they're making a do not do ever list. So yeah, I agree with Dunkey, but he's also wrong. With IGN in particular, they approach their reviews with the aim of the game in mind. They know that the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy isn't for a player like me, someone that didn't like the originals, or even necessarily for players that just love modern platforming. It's a game specifically for the Crash fans and also any poor soul unfortunate enough to be their offspring. Activision's blog confirms this by way of comments like these. Now, we can all agree that some of the Crash levels were and still are not easy. The challenge of the games is one of the things we all love, and that's why it feels so good when you beat them. Our goal for the trilogy was to reduce any points of frustration while preserving the challenge of the originals, and we feel we've done that. An increased precision is now required in the first game, which makes the gameplay experience different. Particularly if you are a new player, you may want to start with the second and third games first, and then come back to try Crash Bandicoot. The word that puts this game into perspective for me is preserving. And yeah, sure, that's obvious for a remake, but not all remakes actually keep the original experience unabated. Usually because that original experience doesn't work anymore. The Legend of Zelda remakes in particular rework or completely axe a lot of the original content in favor of implementing practices that have since been proven to be more effective. Ratchet & Clank on the PS4 made huge changes not only to the gameplay, but also its story and level design to bring the game into modern day. Those remakes are great because they aim to make the games that we remember fondly something that fans accustomed to modern game design can appreciate without the "this was great for its time" asterisk I'm sure many of you have already thrown into the comments. But that's just it. There's plenty of people like you, angry or at the very least annoyed commenter, people that just want to have the same experience as they did in the 90s with the new visual flourishes of the now, and those people are who this game is for. Contrary to what people on YouTube would tell you, there's some pretty smart people over at IGN, and as a result assigned it to a reviewer in the target audience. Imagine that, someone that loves the original reviewing a replica of that original. Who would have done such a thing? Some say doing so threatens objectivity. But in all honesty, objectivity is limited, it's boring, and in criticism it just doesn't exist. You'll get all the objective truths you'll ever see on a game on the back of its box, and even that has subjectivity. People are subjective, get over it. The best you can hope to find is people with opinions that are honest and well sourced in why they feel a certain way about a game. This way, if you agree with them on a regular basis, you know if a game that they're talking about is something that you're into based on their consistency and their honesty. Where Dunkey's argument starts to fall apart is where he asserts that games media outlets and YouTubers should start approaching their businesses in similar ways. This implies that they don't already, and like I just said, they do. Games media is just bigger. Sites like IGN have consistent voices, just as consistent, if not more consistent, than a lot of YouTubers. This is because traditional media has established rules and ethics. YouTubers aren't beholden to these. Media outlets cover every major release. Independent content creators don't have the bandwidth to do that, and a lot of them only cover a very specific kind of game, which isn't bad. Dunkey is right when he says this approach allows viewers the ability to know where you stand as a critic, but IGN does a version of the same thing, and they always have. Everybody's favorite review to hate, that infamous Cali Plaguey 7.9 Too Much Water Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire review, is another example of this approach. The only difference being, with that, people thought she wasn't a fan of Pokemon, and ironically enough for this conversation, that made her unfit to review that game. It almost seems as if game review skeptics just want reviews to echo their opinions. Nah, you guys are what am I talking about? But anyway, this however is separate from when a game is reviewed poorly on IGN, but is then praised or vice versa on one of their mini podcasts by a different personality. Generally, one that doesn't even review games for IGN at all, let alone the game that they're talking about in particular. They're allowed to have their own opinion about a game that's separate from the IGN review, and if you have the wherewithal to watch or read and understand what a reviewer says about a game, I'm positive you can take note that that person's public-facing accounts are there for you to peruse. Their IGN account allows you to see everything they've published on the site. So essentially, you can see the same things you'd be able to see had they been a solo YouTuber and you scrolled through their channel. So you should be able to come to the conclusion that just because a former IGN reviewer like Jack DeVries likes Sonic, or that current IGN host Brian Altano likes or respects Sonic, that doesn't mean that Justin Davis likes Sonic. Even with that clip in Dunkey's video, it's pretty clear Justin's trying to move the conversation along. You know, yes and all of that. To wrap this up, let's talk about scores. Dunkey says in his video that games critics generally restrict their scores to 7, 8, or 9, which in most cases these days is true, and I agree, that's pretty dumb, but I'd like to present to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that 1, games are better now than they ever were. So yeah, even by Dunkey's standard of comparing games to more than recent feats in the industry, the average game is bound to be better than games that belong in the 6, 5, 4 and below territory. Even Mass Effect, which anyone that knows me will tell you I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm not blind enough to tell you it deserves a terrible score for some shortcomings. Just an average one, which it has. And 2, that all game scoring is dumb, especially when you consider that all that people do is use it as leverage in pissing contests with their fellow fanboy friends. IGN's general manager Per Snyder has said himself that eye tracking on the site points to the majority of clicks on reviews coming from people that immediately scroll to the score. The score means nothing without the words said, even if the number isn't in line with your interpretation of what was said. For instance, a game having a problem doesn't bar it from being a 10 out of 10. A proposed 10 out of 10 game having a problem just means it's not perfect, but what it aims to do, it does so well that the low points don't hinder the overall experience of the game. Reading the full review generally shows that. All the actual number does is provides people with a straw man to jump down the reviewer's throat if the number isn't pretty enough for them. So too long didn't watch, YouTube content creation and games media are two sides of the same coin. People are allowed different opinions as long as they back them up and stand by them, and game scores are dumb. We learned a lot today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, why not share it with a friend or on social media, or I don't know, tweet it at IGN, Kanye West, Dunkey, whoever. And if you're new here, why not subscribe and leave a comment, tell me what you have for breakfast. Also, I'll be streaming on Twitch tonight with the Wolf Den. Come back here at midnight. We'll be playing Splatoon 2. Okay, that's it for me. See you then.